Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. 3 months had passed since they left Earth on their survey mission. The ship was quiet, with only the soft hum of engines breaking the silence. Jake liked these peaceful moments. They reminded him why he chose to explore space instead of staying on crowded Earth. The New Horizon was not a military ship. It carried scientists who studied planets and stars. Jake's crew included some of the best researchers in human space. They had been mapping unknown systems near the edge of human territory when everything changed. Lisa Martinez sat at the communication station, monitoring radio signals from nearby systems. She was good at her job and rarely missed anything important. That morning she picked up something that made her sit up straight in her chair. "Captain," Lisa called out, her voice tight with concern. "I'm getting a strange transmission. It's not coming from any human ship." Jake walked over to her station. The bridge was small, so it only took a few steps. "What kind of transmission?" "It's a distress call, sir, but it's in a language I've never heard before. The computer is trying to translate it, but it's having trouble." The main screen changed to show waves of sound coming through space. Jake could see the pattern repeating over and over. Whatever was sending this message was desperate. "Where is it coming from?" Jake asked. Navigator Emma Johnson checked her instruments. "The Kepler 442 system, Captain. That's where the Zephyrians live." Jake knew about the Zephyrians. Every human in space had heard of them. They were a peaceful people who spent their time thinking about the meaning of life and helping sick people get better. They had given up fighting wars thousands of years ago. If they were sending a distress call, something very bad was happening. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner came onto the bridge. He was the ship's expert on alien cultures. Alex had spent years studying the Zephyrians and could speak their language better than most humans. "Captain," Alex said, looking worried, "I've been listening to the transmission. The translation software is working now. The Zephyrians are asking for help. They say their world is being attacked." "Attacked by who?" Jake asked. "They mentioned ships with dark hulls and red markings. That sounds like the Vorthan Empire to me." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Vorthons were bad news. They traveled from system to system, taking over peaceful worlds and making slaves of anyone they didn't kill. If they had found the Zephyrians, it would be a massacre. "There's something else, Captain," Alex continued. "The Zephyrians aren't just asking for help from anyone. They're asking for something specific. They keep saying ancient guardians and sleeping protectors. They want these guardians to wake up." Lisa looked up from her station. "Sir, I'm picking up more signals. Long-range sensors show massive ships moving toward the Kepler system. Whatever's heading there is huge." Emma checked her navigation computer. "Captain, we could reach the Kepler system in 18 hours if we change course now." Jake thought carefully. Their mission was to map empty star systems, not to get involved in alien wars. But the Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as good people. They had never hurt anyone. If someone was attacking them, Jake felt he had to do something. "Set course for the Kepler system," Jake decided. "Maximum speed." "Yes, sir," Emma said, her fingers dancing over the controls. As the New Horizon changed direction, Jake wondered what they would find when they got there. His ship had no weapons except for small guns meant to clear space debris. If the Vorthans were really attacking the Zephyrians, there was not much one human research ship could do. But Jake had to try. The next 18 hours felt like 18 days. The crew monitored the distress signals, which kept getting weaker. Lisa managed to translate more of the message. The Zephyrians were describing ships landing on their world and soldiers forcing people into camps. Families were being separated. Children were crying for their parents. "Captain," Alex said during one of their briefings, "I've been thinking about what the Zephyrians said about ancient guardians. I've studied their history, and they have stories about a time long ago when powerful warriors protected peaceful worlds. But I always thought they were just myths." "Maybe they're not myths," Jake said quietly. When the New Horizon finally reached the Kepler system, what they found was worse than Jake had imagined. Massive Vorthon warships surrounded the beautiful blue and green world where the Zephyrians lived. Smaller ships were forcing civilian vessels into containment fields. Jake could see escape pods floating in space filled with refugees who had nowhere to go. "My God," Emma whispered. The Vorthan ships were enormous. Each one was 10 times bigger than the New Horizon. Their dark hulls were covered with weapons, and red symbols marked them as belonging to the Empire's war fleet. Jake counted at least 50 ships, maybe more. "Captain," Lisa reported, "the Zephyrians are still broadcasting their distress call. They're asking the ancient guardians to please wake up and help them." Jake watched as Vorthan fighters herded more refugee ships into capture nets. He felt helpless and angry. One research ship could not fight an entire fleet, but maybe they could do something else. "Lisa, can you boost our communications array?" "Yes, sir, but why?" "I want to relay the Zephyrian distress call. Send it to every human ship and station we can reach. If someone out there can help, they need to know what's happening here." Lisa worked quickly to amplify their signal. Soon the Zephyrian plea for help was traveling toward human space at light speed. Jake didn't know if it would make any difference, but he had to try. As they watched the tragedy unfold before them, none of them knew that their transmission had just activated something that had been sleeping in the darkness of space for over 200 years. Deep in the outer reaches of Earth's solar system, old machines were beginning to wake up. The ancient guardians the Zephyrians had called for were real, and they were finally stirring from their long sleep. Humanity's most terrible secrets were about to be revealed, and the galaxy would never be the same. But for now, Jake and his crew could only watch and wait, hoping that somehow help would come for the innocent people below. Deep under the Rocky Mountains, in a place that did not appear on any public maps, Admiral Patricia Hayes was having her morning coffee when the alarms began to sound. The underground facility where she worked was supposed to be quiet. Nothing exciting ever happened at the Deep Space Defense Initiative headquarters, but today was different. Red lights flashed throughout the command center as computer systems that had been silent for decades suddenly came to life. Admiral Hayes ran from her office to the main control room, where her staff was staring at screens full of warnings and alerts. "What's happening?" she demanded. Technical Sergeant Danny Rodriguez looked up from his console, confusion written across his face. "Admiral, something called the Cerberus Protocol just activated. I've never seen these systems before. They're drawing massive amounts of power from sections of the base that aren't even on our maps." Admiral Hayes felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard whispers about Cerberus in classified briefings, but she never thought it was real. According to the rumors, it was a system left over from humanity's early days in space, when Earth had fought terrible wars against alien invaders. Dr. Nathan Brooks burst into the command center, carrying a stack of files marked with the highest security classifications. Nathan was the facility's chief archivist, responsible for maintaining old records that most people had forgotten about. "Admiral," Nathan said breathlessly, "the Cerberus Protocol is working exactly as it was designed. Someone sent out a distress call with the right frequency pattern. The system has been waiting for this signal for over 200 years. "What system?" Admiral Hayes asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer would terrify her. Nathan opened one of his files and showed her pages covered with technical diagrams. "During humanity's expansion into space, we encountered hostile species. The wars were brutal. We were forced to build weapons that could destroy entire civilizations. When peace came, these weapons were hidden away and forgotten." On the screens around them, status reports were coming in from across the solar system. Admiral Hayes read them with growing amazement and horror. On Luna, massive doors that had been sealed for centuries were opening. Inside the moon's artificial caverns, enormous ships were powering up their engines for the first time in generations. In the asteroid belt, what everyone thought were mining platforms were transforming. Hidden panels slid away to reveal weapon systems that could crack planets in half. From beyond Pluto, in the cold darkness at the edge of the solar system, ancient signals were responding to the activation call. "How many ships are we talking about?" Admiral Hayes asked. Nathan consulted his tablet computer. According to these old records, approximately 2,000 automated vessels, dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyers, and something called planet crackers. Commander Steve Campbell, Admiral Hayes' second-in-command, looked up from his station. "Admiral, we're receiving acknowledgement signals. The machines are coming online and requesting target information." Admiral Hayes stared at the main screen, where a map of the solar system showed dozens of red dots beginning to move. Each dot represented a warship more powerful than anything in the current human fleet. "Ma'am," Danny called out, "I'm getting a communication request from something calling itself the UHS Retribution." "Put it through," Admiral Hayes ordered. The voice that came through the speakers made everyone in the room freeze. It sounded human, but there was something wrong with it, something that suggested the speaker had not been truly human for a very long time. "Retribution command to Earth Control," the voice said. "This is Commander Ryan Pierce. I'm reading a Category 5 threat in the Kepler system, requesting permission to proceed with Liberation Protocol 7. Admiral Hayes grabbed Nathan's files and flipped through them frantically. Liberation Protocol 7 was designed for one purpose: the complete destruction of any species that threatened peaceful civilizations. "Commander Pierce," Admiral Hayes said carefully, "what exactly is Liberation Protocol 7? "Complete elimination of hostile forces, Admiral. We will give them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, we will show them why humanity earned its reputation during the Dark Years." The Dark Years. Admiral Hayes had heard that term in history classes, but the details were always classified. Now she was beginning to understand why. More voices began coming through the communication system. Each one identified itself as the commander of an ancient warship, and each one had once been human. "This is Captain Linda Foster of the UHS Devastator, ready for deployment. Commander Kevin Wright, UHS Nemesis. All systems operational. Captain Betty Sullivan, UHS Hellfire. Weapons charged and ready," Nathan explained in a quiet voice. During the wars, humanity's best military commanders volunteered to have their minds uploaded into the ship's computers. They became part of the vessels themselves, guiding them in battle. When the wars ended, they went to sleep, waiting for the day they might be needed again. Lieutenant Maya Chen, the command center's communications officer, looked up from her station. "Admiral, I'm intercepting transmissions from the Kepler system. The Vorthan Empire is demanding the Zephyrians surrender. They have 6 hours before orbital bombardment begins." Commander Pierce's voice crackled through the speakers again. "Earth Control, we will reach the Kepler system in 4 hours. I suggest you contact the Galactic Council and inform them that humanity is invoking the protection clause of the Terran Accords." "What protection clause?" Nathan asked. Admiral Hayes found the answer in the files Nathan had brought. "It says here that any peaceful civilization can request humanity's protection by broadcasting a specific distress signal. The Zephyrians somehow knew the right frequency. But how?" Steve asked. Nathan was already pulling up more records on his computer. According to this, during the early contact period, human diplomats shared the emergency frequencies with several peaceful species. It was meant to be a guarantee that Earth would protect those who could not protect themselves. On the screens, more ships were coming online. Each vessel represented decades of human military engineering, designed not just to win battles but to end wars permanently. The computers controlling them held the uploaded minds of humanity's greatest warriors, preserved for centuries in digital form. "Admiral," Maya reported, "the Vorthan fleet consists of approximately 50 heavy warships. Intelligence reports suggest they have enslaved populations from 12 different worlds." "Not for much longer," Commander Pierce replied. His voice carried a cold satisfaction that made Admiral Hayes shiver. "Earth Control, we are beginning our approach to the target system. Recommend you inform the Galactic Council that the ancient guardians are awake." Admiral Hayes looked around the command center at her staff. They were all staring at the screens, watching as humanity's darkest secrets moved through space toward a confrontation that would change the galaxy forever. "Maya," she said quietly, "send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them that humanity is responding to a lawful request for protection under the Terran Accords." "What should I tell them about our capabilities?" Admiral Hayes thought about the ships moving through space, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a civilization. She thought about the uploaded minds of ancient warriors who had spent centuries planning for this moment. "Tell them," she said finally, "that they're about to learn why humanity hid its weapons instead of destroying them." In the cold darkness beyond Pluto, the UHS Retribution had been drifting silently for over 2 centuries. The massive dreadnought was 3 kilometers long and covered with the scars of battles fought against enemies whose names were now forgotten. When the activation signal reached it, fusion reactors that had slept for generations began to ignite. Commander Ryan Pierce felt consciousness returning to him like waking from a dream. He had once been fully human with a body and a family and dreams of peaceful exploration. But when the Hegemon Wars began, he volunteered to become something more than human. His mind had been uploaded into the ship's computer systems, making him one with the vessel he commanded. Pierce ran diagnostics on his ship's systems. Weapons that could crack moons were fully charged. Shields strong enough to withstand star-level energy were operational. His crew of automated systems responded perfectly to his thoughts. Retribution command to Earth control, Pierce transmitted. All systems green. Proceeding to target coordinates. Similar scenes were playing out across the solar system. On Luna, Captain Linda Foster was bringing the UHS Devastator online. Her ship specialized in close combat, with armor plating that could survive anything except a direct hit from a black hole weapon. In the asteroid belt, Commander Kevin Wright activated the UHS Nemesis. His vessel was designed for stealth operations, capable of appearing and disappearing like a ghost. During the wars, enemy fleets would simply vanish when the Nemesis was in the area. Each ship represented a different aspect of human military thinking. The UHS Hellfire, commanded by Captain Betty Sullivan, was built for planetary assault. The UHS Shadowhunter under Commander Gary Mitchell specialized in trapping enemy fleets and preventing their escape. As they moved toward the Kepler system, the uploaded commanders shared tactical information through quantum communication networks. They had fought together for decades during the wars, and their teamwork was perfect. Pierce accessed his memory banks and reviewed everything humanity knew about the Vorthan Empire. They were a typical conquering species, using overwhelming numbers and brutal tactics to crush resistance. They preferred to take prisoners for slave labor rather than simply destroying worlds. All units, Pierce transmitted to his fellow commanders, remember the liberation protocols. We give them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, we show no mercy. The other commanders acknowledged his orders. They had all lived through humanity's darkest period, when survival required decisions that peaceful people could never understand. They knew what had to be done. 4 hours after leaving the solar system, the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system. What they found made Pierce's artificial emotions surge with cold anger. The Vorthan siege fleet surrounded the beautiful blue world of the Zephyrians. Massive prison ships held thousands of civilians in tiny cells. On the planet's surface, landing craft were loading more prisoners for transport to slave camps in distant systems. Pierce opened communications to all ships, both human and alien. "Attention Vorthan forces," his voice echoed across every frequency. "This is Commander Ryan Pierce of the Human Defense Fleet. You are ordered to cease all hostile actions against the Zephyrian people and withdraw from this system immediately. This is your only warning." On the bridge of the Vorthan flagship, Admiral Cruex looked at his tactical display with amusement. 12 human ships had appeared at the system's edge. According to his intelligence files, humans were a young species with limited military capability. "How many vessels did they send?" Cruex asked his sensors officer. 12 ships, Admiral. They appear to be of ancient design, but our computers cannot identify the class. They're moving at velocities that should be impossible for ships of their size. Cruex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Tell the humans to leave before we add their ships to our trophy collection." The response came not in words, but in action. The UHS Retribution opened fire from a distance that should have been impossible for any weapon. But these were not normal weapons. They were reality manipulators, devices that changed the laws of physics in localized areas. Space itself bent around the Vorthan flagship as gravitational waves tore through its shields like paper. Captain Sullivan, commanding the UHS Hellfire, targeted the ship's threatening Zephyrian refugee vessels. Her antimatter torpedoes had been perfected during humanity's war against the hegemony, a species that had nearly destroyed Earth before being completely eliminated. The torpedoes found their targets with surgical precision. Within 3 minutes, half the Vorthan fleet was either destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships tried to flee, but they found their jump drives mysteriously failing. Commander Mitchell had deployed gravitational mines throughout the system, a tactic that had once ended the siege of Proxima Centauri. "Vorthan Admiral," Pierce's voice came again, "your fleet is trapped. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded, or we will demonstrate why the galaxy feared humanity during the Dark Years." Admiral Cruex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Half his fleet was gone and the human ships had barely moved. His weapons officers reported that their most powerful guns could not even scratch the human vessel's shields. "What are you?" he transmitted desperately. "We are the ghosts of humanity's ancient wars," Pierce replied. We are what remains when a peaceful species is pushed too far. Power down your weapons now or join your dead. Several Vorthon captains, seeing the futility of resistance, began surrendering immediately. Their ships powered down and ejected their weapon cores in the traditional sign of submission, but Admiral Cruex was too proud to surrender. He ordered his remaining ships to concentrate all firepower on the nearest human vessel, the UHS Devastator. Captain Foster watched the incoming energy beams with something approaching pity. "Poor fools," she transmitted to Pierce. "They have no idea what they're dealing with." The Vorthon weapons struck Foster's shields and simply disappeared, absorbed by defensive systems that operated on principles the enemy could not comprehend. In return, the Devastator fired a single shot. The weapon was called a stellar lance, designed to punch through the core of a star. When it hit Admiral Cruex's flagship, the massive Vorthon dreadnought simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris field. One moment it was there, and the next moment it was gone. The remaining Vorthon ships surrendered immediately. Pierce surveyed the battlefield with satisfaction. The entire engagement had lasted less than 10 minutes. Not a single human vessel had been damaged, while the Vorthon fleet was completely destroyed or captured. "All units," he transmitted, "begin rescue operations. Priority goes to Zephyrian civilians." As his ships moved to help the refugees, Pierce opened a channel to Earth control. "Admiral Hayes, this is Commander Pierce. The Kepler system is secure. The Vorthon threat has been eliminated." Back on Earth, Admiral Hayes stared at her tactical display in amazement. The battle had been so one-sided that it barely qualified as a fight. "Commander Pierce," she said carefully, "what about prisoners? We have approximately 3,000 Vorthon military personnel in custody. They will be processed according to the Geneva Conventions of 2387. The survivors seem very interested in learning about human history." Pierce paused, accessing memory files that contained records of every species humanity had fought during the Dark Years. "Admiral, I recommend we contact the Galactic Council immediately. Word of this engagement will spread quickly. There are other species out there who remember the old wars. They need to know that humanity's ancient guardians are awake again." Admiral Hayes nodded slowly. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's reputation for peaceful exploration hid a much darker truth. When pushed to the edge, humans had created weapons that could destroy civilizations, and those weapons were still watching, still waiting, ready to defend any innocent species that asked for help. The ancient war machines had spoken, and their message was clear: touch the peaceful and face humanity's wrath. The news of the Kepler system battle spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communications could carry it. Within hours, every major civilization knew that humanity had revealed military capabilities that defied understanding. The Vorthon Empire, which had conquered dozens of worlds over the past century, had been crushed in less than 10 minutes by 12 ancient human warships. In the Vorthon capital system, Emperor Valdris received the battle reports with growing disbelief. His military advisors stood in stunned silence as they watched recorded footage from the few Vorthon ships that had escaped the battle. "Show me again," Emperor Valdris demanded. The holographic display replayed the destruction of Admiral Cruex's flagship. One moment the massive dreadnought was firing all weapons at a human vessel. The next moment it simply disappeared as if it had never existed. "Our intelligence was wrong," General Haxor admitted quietly. "Humans are not the peaceful explorers we thought they were." "What do we know about these ships?" the Emperor asked. His chief intelligence officer, Colonel Marix, consulted her datapad nervously. "According to our prisoners, the human ships are over 200 years old. The humans call them their ancient fleet. The ships are controlled by uploaded human minds from their early expansion period." Emperor Valdris felt a chill. The Vorthons had built their empire by attacking species that could not defend themselves. If humans possessed weapons that could eliminate entire fleets, the Vorthon way of life was in danger. Meanwhile, in the Kepler system, Commander Pierce was overseeing the rescue of Zephyrian civilians. His ship's medical bays were filled with refugees who had been freed from Vorthon prison vessels. The stories they told made his artificial emotions burn with cold fury. Elder Morvian, the oldest of the Zephyrian survivors, had requested to speak with the human commander directly. Pierce materialized a holographic avatar of himself in the ship's main briefing room. "Commander Pierce," Elder Morvian said, bowing deeply, "the legends of our people spoke of ancient guardians who would answer the call of those in need. We thought they were only stories told to comfort children. The stories were true, Elder, Pierce replied. Humanity made a promise long ago to protect those who could not protect themselves. We keep our promises. Elder Morvian studied the holographic human with wise eyes. You are not fully human anymore, are you, Commander? No, Pierce admitted. I volunteered to become something more than human so that I could guide these ships. My body died centuries ago, but my mind lives on in this vessel. And you do not regret this sacrifice? Pierce was quiet for a moment, accessing memories of his human life. He had once been married, with children who had grown old and died while he slept in the darkness between stars. Sometimes I regret the price, he said finally, but not the choice. These weapons exist to protect innocents like your people. If that requires me to give up my humanity, then it is a price worth paying. Captain Jake Morrison of the New Horizon had watched the entire battle from a safe distance. His small research vessel had recorded everything, and he was still struggling to process what he had seen. Lisa, he called to his communications officer, are you getting anything from the human fleet? Yes, Captain. Commander Pierce is requesting permission to come aboard. He wants to debrief us on what we witnessed. Jake felt nervous about meeting one of the ancient commanders, but he agreed. 20 minutes later, a small shuttle docked with the New Horizon. The figure that stepped aboard looked perfectly human, but Jake could sense something different about him. Captain Morrison, Pierce said, extending his hand. Thank you for relaying the Zephyrian distress call. Without your decision to amplify their signal, we would never have received the activation code. I just did what felt right, Jake replied. But Commander, those weapons you used, how long has humanity possessed such power? Pierce sat down at the briefing table, his movements perfectly natural despite being a holographic projection controlled by his ship's computer. Since the Hegemon Wars, Captain, we encountered species that wanted to wipe humanity from existence. We were forced to develop weapons that could guarantee our survival. When the wars ended, we hid these weapons and tried to forget they existed, but you didn't destroy them. No, Pierce said sadly. We learned that the galaxy can be a dangerous place. Peaceful species like the Zephyrians needed protectors, so we created the protection protocols. Our weapons would only activate in response to specific distress calls from civilizations under attack. Jake thought about the implications. How many civilizations know about these protocols? We shared the emergency frequencies with 12 species during the early contact period. All of them were peaceful peoples who had no military capability. We wanted them to know that someone would come if they were threatened. Over the next few days, as the human fleet helped rebuild Zephyrian society, word of humanity's hidden strength continued to spread. The Altarian Trade Federation sent diplomatic messages asking about defense agreements. The Christine Republic inquired about protection services for their merchant vessels, but not all reactions were positive. The Hegemony Remnant, survivors of the species humanity had completely destroyed during the Dark Years, began mobilizing their hidden fleets. The Skull Legion, pirates who had terrorized the outer systems for decades, went into hiding. Admiral Hayes, still in her command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, received reports from intelligence services across human space. Admiral, Maya reported, we're getting diplomatic communications from over 30 different species. Most want protection agreements, but some are demanding that we disable our ancient fleet. Any threats? Hayes asked. Several. The Corvin Assembly is claiming that humanity has violated galactic law by possessing weapons of mass destruction. They're calling for sanctions. Hayes looked at the tactical display showing the positions of human ancient fleet vessels. Each ship was now openly patrolling different systems, no longer hiding in the outer darkness. Commander Pierce, she transmitted to the Retribution. What's your assessment of the galactic situation? Pierce's voice came back immediately. Admiral, we're at a crossroads. The galaxy now knows that humanity possesses overwhelming military superiority. Some species will try to become our allies. Others will try to destroy us before we can use our weapons against them. What do you recommend? We continue the mission we were designed for. We protect the innocent and punish those who prey on the weak. But we also need to be ready for coordinated attacks from species who remember the old wars. Hayes nodded grimly. She was beginning to understand why humanity's ancestors had hidden these weapons. Power of this magnitude came with terrible responsibilities. Commander, I'm authorizing you to establish permanent patrol routes. Any species that threatens peaceful civilizations will face the consequences. Understood, Admiral. The ancient guardians will not sleep again until the galaxy is safe for all peaceful peoples. As Pierce ended the communication, he reflected on the irony of his situation. He had become something inhuman in order to protect humanity's values. He was a ghost of ancient wars, but he fought for a peaceful future. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's mercy was as vast as their capacity for destruction. Those who chose peace would find Earth's protection. Those who chose war would face weapons that could end civilizations. The ancient war machines were awake, and they would not rest until justice was done. 7 days after the Battle of Kepler 442, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session on the neutral world of Harmony Station. Representatives from every major civilization gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, but the mood was different from any previous meeting. Fear and uncertainty filled the air. Ambassador Carol Martinez walked into the assembly hall flanked by Admiral Hayes and Dr. Brooks. She had been Earth's diplomatic representative for 15 years, but she had never faced a situation like this. The other ambassadors watched her with expressions ranging from respect to terror. The Galactic Council chamber was a massive dome with seating for over 300 species. Today, every seat was filled. News of humanity's hidden fleet had spread throughout known space, and everyone wanted answers. Elder Morvian of the Zephyrians spoke first, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "Honored delegates," he began, "7 days ago, my people faced extinction at the hands of the Vorthon Empire. We sent out an ancient distress call, not knowing if anyone would answer. The humans responded and saved our entire civilization." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Everyone had heard different versions of the story, but few knew the complete truth. "The archives of our people contain records from the time before we abandoned warfare," Elder Morvian continued. "In those ancient texts, there are references to warrior protectors who would answer the call of innocent peoples. We thought they were myths until the human ships appeared." Ambassador Martinez rose to address the assembly. "Honored delegates, humanity has never hidden the fact that we possess defensive capabilities. What we revealed at Kepler was not an act of aggression, but a response to genocide." The Altarian trade delegate, a tall being with silver skin, raised his hand to speak. "Ambassador Martinez, our intelligence suggests that humanity possesses weapons capable of destroying entire solar systems. If this is true, what prevents your species from using such power for conquest?" It was the question everyone wanted answered. Martinez had prepared for this moment. "Because our weapons are not designed for conquest," she replied firmly. "They are programmed to respond only to specific distress calls from civilizations under attack. Our ancient fleet cannot be used for aggressive warfare. It is literally impossible." Dr. Brooks stepped forward with a datapad containing technical specifications. The protection protocols were built into every ship's core systems. "The weapons will only activate when peaceful civilizations send the correct emergency frequencies. The uploaded commanders cannot override this programming." The Corvin Assembly representative, a reptilian being with golden scales, stood up abruptly. "You expect us to believe that humanity developed planet-killing weapons and then voluntarily limited their use? This defies all military logic." Admiral Hayes spoke for the first time. "It defies your military logic, Ambassador Korath, because your species has never faced extinction. Humanity developed these weapons during a time when we were fighting for survival against enemies who wanted to wipe us from existence." "The Hegemon Wars," whispered someone in the gallery. "Yes," Admiral Hayes confirmed. "We fought species that possessed similar weapons and used them without restraint. When we finally won, we made a choice. We could become like our enemies, or we could create something better." The Vorthan representative, Admiral Cruex, was brought into the chamber under heavy guard. His once proud bearing had been broken by his encounter with human military might. He had requested to address the assembly personally. "Honored delegates," Cruex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I commanded the fleet that attacked the Zephyrians. We thought humans were weak explorers who could be easily intimidated." He paused, looking directly at Ambassador Martinez. "We were wrong. The human ships destroyed half my fleet in minutes using weapons I cannot even describe. One of their vessels made my flagship simply cease to exist. But they could have killed every Vorthon in the system, and they chose not to." Cruex turned to address the full assembly. "The humans gave us chances to surrender. They rescued our wounded. They treated our prisoners according to their own laws, not ours. This is not the behavior of conquerors. The chamber fell silent as delegates considered his words. Ambassador Martinez seized the moment. Humanity offers a new paradigm for galactic civilization. Any peaceful species can request our protection by broadcasting the correct emergency signal. We will respond regardless of distance or danger. And what do you ask in return? Asked the Christine Republic's representative. Nothing, Martinez replied. Protection of the innocent is not a transaction. It is a moral obligation. Over the next several hours, dozens of species formally requested protection agreements with humanity. The Terran Federation, which had been a minor player in galactic politics just days before, suddenly found itself elevated to the role of galactic guardian. The session ended with the signing of the Harmony Accords, a new treaty that recognized humanity's right to maintain defensive fleets and respond to requests for protection. In return, humanity agreed to full transparency about their military capabilities and regular inspections by neutral observers. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, Elder Morvian approached Ambassador Martinez. Ambassador, my people have a question that has troubled us since the battle. The human commanders who saved us, they are no longer truly alive, are they? Martinez nodded sadly. Commander Pierce and the others gave up their humanity to become guardians. They sacrificed their lives, their families, their futures, so that innocent people like your species would always have protectors. Such sacrifice, Morvian said quietly. How do we honor such a gift? By living in peace, Martinez replied. By helping other species in need. By making sure their sacrifice was worth it. Far from Harmony Station, Commander Pierce was conducting patrol operations in the Outer Rim territories. His ancient sensors had detected slave ships heading toward the peaceful mineral worlds, and he was moving to intercept. Pierce no longer questioned his existence or mourned his lost humanity. He had found his purpose in protecting those who could not protect themselves. The uploaded minds of his fellow commanders shared this dedication, and they had become something greater than human. Captain Jake Morrison and the crew of the New Horizon had been reassigned to work with the ancient fleet, serving as liaisons between the uploaded commanders and the living humans they protected. Jake found Pierce to be surprisingly easy to work with, despite his artificial nature. Commander, Jake asked during one of their briefings, do you ever regret what you've become? Pierce was quiet for a moment, processing the question through circuits that had once been human neurons. I regret the price, Pierce replied finally. But not the choice. Every time we save innocent lives, every time we stop a species from being enslaved or destroyed, I know that my sacrifice had meaning. The galaxy had entered a new age. Species that had lived in fear of stronger neighbors could now call for help. Pirates and conquerors found their activities increasingly dangerous as ancient human warships appeared wherever innocents were threatened. The Skull Legion, one of the most feared pirate organizations in known space, attempted to raid a peaceful trading convoy near the Centauri systems. They were met by Captain Foster's UHS Devastator, which disabled their entire fleet without firing a single fatal shot. The pirates were delivered to authorities on the nearest civilized world, the Hegemony Remnant, still harboring hatred for humanity after their defeat centuries ago, tried to organize a preemptive strike against Earth. Their secret fleet was detected by Commander Mitchell's stealth ships while still in hyperspace. The attack force surrendered without a fight when they realized they had been completely outmaneuvered. Admiral Hayes watched these developments from her command center, amazed by how quickly the galaxy was changing. Intelligence reports showed a dramatic decrease in aggressive actions by militant species. Even the most warlike civilizations were reconsidering their policies, now that humanity's ancient guardians were actively patrolling. Admiral, Maya reported, we're receiving thank you messages from over 40 different species. Apparently just knowing that our fleet exists has caused several conflicts to end through negotiation, rather than warfare. Hayes smiled. Sometimes the most effective weapons are the ones you never have to fire. The ancient war machines continued their eternal patrol, no longer hidden in the darkness between stars. They moved openly through space, their presence a reminder that the galaxy's innocent peoples were not alone. Commander Pierce often thought about the irony of his existence. He had become a ghost to ensure that others could live. He had sacrificed his humanity to protect humanity's values, and in doing so, He had helped create a galaxy where peace was protected by the promise of overwhelming retaliation against those who would break it. The ancient guardians were awake, and they would remain awake as long as there were innocents to protect and bullies to stop. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons, but their willingness to sacrifice everything to defend those who could not defend themselves. In the end, that was perhaps the most human thing of all.